Thank you again for joining us today for this webinar about EMV and how an EMV device can ensure that your business growth is secured as an unattended retailer. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I'm Dar, a product marketing manager here at Nayax, and today I'm joined by Brian.
Hi, everyone. Brian Hebert, EVP of Sales for Nayax North America.
And thanks for taking the time for this today, Brian.
Thanks to everyone for joining. I appreciate it.
Definitely. So what will we be going over in today's session? We'll start off by explaining EMV payments and terminals. And afterwards, we'll give you a bit of our insight into the world of contactless payments and the growing trends that we're seeing here. We'll also go over the impact of EMV and what it can do to your revenue. From our experience as a longtime unattended player, especially in the EMV cashless space. And finally, we'll introduce you to Nayax VPOS Touch, our cashless card reader and telemetry device. That'll make sure that you never miss a sale. And afterwards, as I said earlier, we'll have our Q&A session where you can submit questions via our chat, and Brian or myself will happily answer them. So I think we can get started with this session now. So I want to frame this for you. At the end, when there's opportunity, fraud will likely happen. And as we've seen technology advance, especially in the use of cards, fraud has also risen and gained more traction. The most common type of payment fraud currently is card fraud. And in the US, it makes for around 1/3 of all payment fraud. We've maybe all been there, hopefully not, but getting your card details stolen can be anything from slightly annoying to a major issue, depending on what type of fraud is conducted with your card and when you catch on to it, and also your card issuer's policies around this. So, it can really dampen the consumer experience. And the next thing here is really what happens with fraud. We know that losses from card fraud in the US alone in 2020 totaled over $10 billion. So just think about that impact on the economy and what it's doing. And now you might be asking yourself, how does this have any impact on me as an operator, as someone who's doing business? And at the end of the day, the answer to that is really EMV. So the card brands, Europay, MasterCard, and Visa, or EMV Co., created a new protocol looking to strengthen their security around providing better service to consumers who are using their cards as fraud risen. So what is EMV and what does it do? EMV-enabled chip cards were first introduced in 2010. The shift in adoption for them has taken some time on both the consumer side and on the merchant side. EMV essentially is a protocol that secures card transactions, very high level here. But the requirement for consumers is really on their card issuers. As a consumer, all you really need is a card, a credit card or a debit card embedded with an EMV secured chip. Most card issuing banks in the US right now ship EMV plastic. This is due to regulation and requirements by the card brands. So you can expect the majority of consumers nationwide, and we'll see that stat in a bit, to carry those chip cards in their wallet. I want to stop here and say that we know that certain prepaid cards and government issued cards are magstripe only and don't have the EMV chip in them. But what do you need to have as a merchant when it comes to EMV? As an operator or someone doing business, be it attended or unattended retail, you need a card reader. You need a device that's capable of reading that EMV chip and correctly processing those transactions. This is what's required by the card brands for everyone to be compliant and to essentially accept payments. And this has taken some time. We know that there were first some regulations coming in, and in 2017, they really came in full force here. And over that period of time, there's been some waivers. And finally, we're approaching the stage where everyone should really be So I want to give you a bit more input here and some numbers regarding both the global state of EMV, but really focusing in on the US. Based on statistics given to us by EMV the current state of deployment in the US is that 77.5% of all US card present transactions are done on an EMV chip-enabled card. What do we mean by card present? It means either attended or unattended retail, really a transaction, a payment that's being made where the card is present. And if we compare this to the global, we're looking at 88.5% of all global transactions that are EMV chip enabled. Just to put it into context for you, in Europe, where the regulation is much more stringent, you have 99% coverage right now. So 99% of all European transactions are going to be done via an EMV chip-enabled card. And for places like Canada or Latin America, we're looking at 95%. So the US is slowly making more headway in really gaining that coverage that we're seeing around the world. And we definitely see that this is the trend and this is where things are going, especially because we know from all the relationships with the card schemes that this is the direction. So in addition to that, I want to share another stat here, and that's that 63% is the rate of adoption for EMV chip-enabled cards in the US. So let's break it down for a second. And what does it actually mean? It means that over half of any consumers that you have will have an EMV chip-enabled card. Again, this is data that was collected by EMV and based on data collected between July 2020 and June 2021. We are obviously waiting for newer stats, but I think that this really shows you where the trend is and how important it is to make sure that you have your device being able to accept those EMV transactions. So EMV protects consumers and businesses by having a far more secure type of transaction. And the EMV protocol is there for essentially for protection and for security. We know that EMV enabled point of sale terminals can run swipe, insert, and tap transactions. And you might be asking, okay, so what goes where? How do I know what type of transaction is going to be used? The answer is really, it depends. First off, if your consumer has an EMV equipped card, you're going to have something here that might be up to their preference. They might prefer to tap a card on the device and they might prefer to do a chip insert. On the flip side, it might really depend on the size of transaction or what settings have been configured for your terminal. In addition, they can also make things like a mobile payment using Apple Pay or Google Pay over the device if it's equipped to do so. And then we have swipe. So swipe is, essentially what goes on here is that if it's an EMV equipped terminal and an EMV card, you're going to have to either do a chip insert or a tap. Otherwise, you can't swipe the card because the EMV chip requires either the insert or that tap. For any cards that don't have EMV, your consumers can continue to swipe them through that terminal. So it really depends on what's going on during that specific payment. In swipe transactions, you might already know this, but just to make sure that everyone is aligned here, the magnetic strip is being used to pass through that card data to do the transaction itself. Sorry, I lost myself here. I want to stop and move on and talk to you more about contactless. So we at Nayax were EMV cashless advocates. And in our years of business, we've seen how contactless and mobile payments are growing in popularity all over the globe. Nayax is a global company, after all. And supporting contactless and mobile payments is critical in our eyes to success and to ensuring that no matter what, you can accept any payment type that a consumer prefers. Here, I have some numbers kindly shared by Visa on why having contactless and mobile payments is so important. So we know that 85% of consumers in 2021 expected to have a type, just any type, of digital payment option when shopping in person. This can be at an unattended terminal or in a store itself. And really, then you can see that 62% of consumers also expect to be able to tap their card or credit card. And it's understandable. With the amount of chip-enabled cards rising in the US and consumers more and more adopting that tap to pay kind of behavior, and especially post-pandemic, when people wanted to minimize the touch that they have and maybe the surfaces that they're coming into contact with. Having a tap enabled on any device has become really commonplace. We also know that 41% of consumers want to use mobile apps for payments, something like our own Nayax wallet, for example, or 37% of them expect to have the option, 41% expect to use a payment app. So we're going to look at something like Apple Pay or Google Pay. And 37% of them expect to use a mobile wallet, like our own Nayax wallet. And when you look at all these numbers, you want to think about, this is the expected consumer experience. This is what consumers are looking for. We also know that there's an ongoing bridging the online and the offline, the attended and the unattended, where they are. And you, at the end of the day, want more business, right? And you want consumers to be able to pay in the method that they like. So this is what they expect. And if you came up to pay for something and what you expected to happen in terms of your experience wasn't there, how would you feel? How likely are you to return and not have another purchase? And I think these are all things that you should be keeping in mind when considering your strategy around payment. Okay, so I want to stop for a second and focus in on the fact that not all contactless transactions are EMV. This webinar is about EMV and those cashless payments, really, and especially contactless. We have basically two types of contactless payments. You have ones done by an RFID on the chip of the card, and you also have the NFC option. So for mobile payments like Apple Pay and Google Pay, where your consumer is using either their mobile phone or a wearable device like a watch to make the payment. But not all contactless payments are EMV. It's written here plain and simple. Previously, legacy readers have used the NFC technology to accept transactions. That was MSD NFC. And it basically used the rails that the MSD system allowed to process those NFC transactions. We know that these legacy readers utilize NFC technology to accept those transactions. And we also know that going into the future, this will no longer be supported, especially for our US operators. I can say that from our experience in Europe, we accept, obviously we've been EMV certified since 2017, and we've only accepted contactless transactions using EMV. So from here, I'd like to hand it off to you, Brian, to share a bit more about how our operators can increase their revenue with Nayax's EMV solution.
All right. Thank you, Dar. That was very informative on the EMV background and payment trends. And again, welcome everyone to the webinar. Today, I want to discuss how Nayax, through our EMV solution, can increase revenue and also decrease cost, but more importantly, provide the best consumer experience for your end customers. From our experience as an EMV payment provider for the unattended space, we know that EMV is a game changer for unattended operators. I jokingly say that the United States is the last of the party with regard to EMV. And being a global company, Nayax is best suited with, the most experience with EMV to provide our customers with the best options available to truly future-proof your business, given Nayax has been ready for this in the US since 2017. tremendous increase in business in recent months here in the North American market. One of the reasons is because our many years of EMV experience. Right. There we go. All right. So, as I talk to our as I talk to our customers on a daily basis, what I hear is there's still a lot of confusion in the market about EMV. I mean, look at 10 years ago. 10 years ago, cashless payments made up roughly, 15 to 20% of transactions in the unattended space. Today, that number is averaging over 60%, and in some cases, much higher. So almost 2/3 of your customers are using some form of credit, mobile payment, or alternative payment method. And if they're not, or they're not able to, be sure to know that they want to. And as such, an understanding of EMV is really important. Today, EMV payments make up most of the transactions made on Nayax devices in the US. 77% of US cards are EMV. 91% of Nayax payments are EMV. Now, we know there's a lot of talk about contactless payments, but let's not discount that contactless payments make up 33%. As having an EMV card doesn't mean that your card is contactless capable. Thus, having a device that also accepts EMV contact, where you dip your card, is just as important. All Nayax devices have this functionality. As Dar mentioned, there are still some cards out there without an EMV chip. And for that small percentage, those make up about 9% that, swipe their card for a transaction until those issuers, replace those cards with an EMV chip enabled one. As we all know, swipe transactions are the most unsecure. So what are we seeing? Overall, EMV will lift card acceptance rates by approximately 4.5% over swipe transactions. EMV transactions are the most secure. This creates an increase in revenue by allowing you to capture more payments with an EMV capable device. And Nayax operators are saving on costs with a single provider, taking care of them end to end. Also, given, as Dar mentioned, non-EMV contactless payments will no longer be accepted on non-EMV enabled devices. Nayax, being fully EMV compliant, will enable you to increase or retain revenue by 30% by accepting EMV contactless cards in NFC mobile payments. Now, the card brands, the card brands have also that counterfeit card fraud is reduced by 75% when using EMV, which is one of the contributors to the the improvement in acceptance rates, since card brands trust EMV far more than other methods. And with no chargebacks with Nayax EMV, our operators do see operational efficiencies by not having to track, reconcile and follow up with a chargeback and retrieval process. Nayax devices gives consumers every option to pay how they want. And, as new alternative payment methods are introduced, Nayax is on board to enable that acceptance. So let's talk about the consumer for a minute. One important feature that Nayax has implemented recently is called EMV, EMV incremental authorization with multi-Vend capability. So what is that? Well, typically with an unattended machine, operators have many variant prices in those machines, different planograms with a range of prices. The card brands typically won't allow you to authorize for less than the settled amount. Since that final amount isn't readily known, usually the authorization amount is higher than the purchase price. So what happens is you have your consumer stuck with a $5 or $10 authorization hold waiting for the bank to release it and then pass that settled charge, which could only be $1.50. However, Nayax, with its preferred status and banking relationships, was able to develop and become approved for an incremental authorization process using EMV. Consumer experience is key here because there are no high authorization holds waiting for the bank to clear. Now, Nayax with this process will enable the consumer to see the exact final settled amount of the multi-vended transaction be the same as the authorization. Thus, given the EMV environment of security and the better consumer experience, operators are enabled to drive incremental revenue through this process by lifting the average transaction value. So ultimately, you get the benefits of multi-vend without the negatives of, maybe overdrafting your customers' bank accounts, increasing calls to customer service due to high pending transactions, dealing with chargebacks due to perceived fraud. So how do we deliver, right, this, how do we deliver this solution? Let me introduce the VPOS Touch device, our EMV certified reader. This is an all-in-one card reader and telemetry terminal. Listen, this device is ideally suited for unattended machines. It's EMV certified since 2017. It accepts, any cashless payment, swipe, EMV contact, and contactless, mobile, NFC, QR codes, many supported protocols, MDB, Pulse, and many others listed here. Secure 24/7 communication via 4G LTE with Wi-Fi and LAN capabilities. It's a touchscreen device with multiple language selection and voice interaction. I might add that with incremental multi-vend, the voice interaction on the device can actually prompt the consumer for another selection. Remote software updates and a very durable hardware design. Now, all of this is really backed by a network, where Nayax guarantees 99.99% of uptime using 4 global redundant servers. And behind the scenes, the building are all the certifications that Nayax has. Nayax devices are L1 and L2 certified, and we are L3 certified with Heartland and Chase. Nayax doesn't rely on certifications and integrations with third-party card readers or telemeter manufacturers. So, we don't outsource to technical software development companies that maybe white label their payment solutions. Here at Nayax, we develop, manufacture, and control our own service and products. And that's how we're able to quickly pivot on customer feature requests, as well as, a quick turnaround on new alternative payment methods and consumer demand. Nayax devices are integrated with over 1,000 different machines in many verticals, from vending, laundry, amusement, car wash, massage chairs, EV charging. We have certifications at the highest levels, taking security and compliance very seriously. Remember, as Dar said, EMV isn't new and recent. We're just at the end of a road on a mandate that was put into motion in October of 2017 here in the US. So having a global leader that was ready for this upon that first notice is one of those keys to our success. When you buy a new machine for your business, you want it to last for 10, 15 years. Make sure your cashless solution lasts as well. Nayax is the solution for this market. Our vision then, our vision now, and our vision for the future of the unattended market, and even coming into the full attended retail market, is with your success, your profitability, and you having a complete end-to-end technology partner in mind. With that, I'll turn this back over to Dar for.
Great. Thanks, Brian, for that. So we're gonna give me a few moments. I need to read through, and we can address the questions in the Q&A box here.
Okay.
Okay. So, Brian, could you just zoom in a bit and give us a bit more information around when EMV, that regulation that you previously mentioned from 2017, and what's been going on until now? Why are we even talking about EMV right now?
Well, we're at the like I said, we're at the end of some of the mandates that were put in motion years ago. The U.S., as I mentioned, really is catching up to the global scale of safety and security. And EMV was, brought to the U.S. The unattended market and the fuel market were sort of the last two markets that, were experiencing waivers because of the breadth of technology and hardware updates that needed to happen. We're just at the end of that road where the waivers are expiring. And one of the good things is Nayax really wasn't a part of all of that. We were ready from out the gate, being EMV certified since 2017. So we're definitely an important player in the EMV landscape, and we're definitely ready and willing to help any operators that have further questions and really need to future-proof their business.
Great. I see a question around EMV multi-Vend with the incremental auth option. Can you share with us if it's available now for operators who want to add it on to their portfolio?
Sure. So there's a couple of different ways, and if the machine board is capable, and with an equipped Nayax device, we're happy to fulfill a test on the multi-Vend capabilities. But right now it is available. We have successfully tested it in the market. It is ready to to be implemented. And we're definitely excited about getting operators on board, because what it truly does is enables a multi-Vend scenario in a safe, secure EMV environment to really drive incremental revenue for the operator. So yes, it is ready.
Great. I'm personally excited about incremental auth. I think that being able to make a purchase without having to go back and forth is really, really great. Would make purchasing my snacks during lunch much easier. Okay, and basically what we're asked is does Moment 2 work with the VPOS device that Brian showed earlier? And I can actually answer this one. And our Moment 2 app and our DCS system all work with all of our devices, really depending on your service package with Nayax. Okay, give me a moment. I think we're running quite short on time, but we have enough time for one last question, right, Brian? Okay, so you mentioned the 4.5 acceptance rate. And the question here is really, what does it give an operator that they have this 4.5 acceptance rate?
So the 4.5 acceptance rate is actually the acceptance of an EMV over swipe. So what we see in an environment where EMV transactions are the most secure, the acceptance rates are higher than swipe, you want to make sure that your consumers, when they attempt to vend something, have a successful transaction. Using the most secured, the most up-to-date, the most EMV-enabled process will ensure that the transaction will be successfully authorized, successfully processed over some of the non-secure swipe transactions. So that's what that 4.5 really really means. It's EMV is 4.5% greater acceptance rates than swipe.
Awesome. Okay, so we're actually a bit over time right now. I'd like to take a moment and say thank you to all of you for attending and for Brian for answering the questions. And again, like I mentioned earlier, any questions that we haven't been able to address right now, someone from the Nayax team will reach out and make sure that you have your answers here. So again, thank you all so much, and we'll see you during our next webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining.